April 7th, 1945. Southern Germany. The sky hangs heavy with war. Smoke trails from hundreds of bombers stretch across the horizon. B-17 flying fortresses and B-24 Liberators lumbering at altitude, escorted by a scattered shield of American fighters. They call it a combat box. But to the Luftwaffe's new jet squadrons, it's a slow-moving buffet. Below the formation, flying wide off the right flank, is Lieutenant John Green Parker, a rookie pilot in a worn-out P-51 Mustang that ground crews back at Ramstein Field jokingly call Hail Mary. The name fits. The engine has misfired twice this week. The hydraulic pressure dips during climbs. And Parker? He's got 19 hours of combat time, most of it uneventful. Today is supposed to be routine. A long, quiet escort run over Regensburg. But already, the radios are uneasy. Reports from ahead mention Me-262 sightings. Germany's miracle fighter, jet-powered, fast, untouchable. Allied intelligence says they've been scrambled in small packs, targeting bomber columns before the fighters can react. Parker knows the math. The Me-262 can hit 540 miles per hour. His P-51 tops out at just over 430 on a good day. You don't chase a jet, you survive it, if you're lucky. Briefing officers drilled it into them. If you see one, don't play hero. Stay with your squadron. Guard the bombers. You can't win a race with a rocket. Then it happens. Bandit! 2 o'clock high, closing fast, screams a voice over the radio. Parker jerks his head up. At first he sees nothing, then a shimmer. A glint of silver slicing out of the sun, angling down like a falling star, the Me-262. It's descending hard on the B-24s, straight into the heart of the formation. It's too fast, too clean. A blur of swept wings and jet exhaust. Tracer rounds light up the sky. One B-24 takes a direct hit to the wing. Flames, metal, screams over the intercom. The aircraft rolls right and breaks apart mid-air. Parker stares, frozen. Then something clicks. He yanks the stick hard left and pushes the throttle to the firewall. The Merlin engine roars like a wild animal. His wingman yells through the headset, "What the hell are you doing? You can't catch that jet!" But Parker doesn't care. Not anymore. He dives, not to intercept. That would be suicide. But to close the angle. He banks beneath the bomber line, using gravity to build speed. Every dial on the panel trembles. His airspeed indicator climbs. 380, 400, 420. Not enough. But the Me-262 slows. That's its weakness. It has to throttle back to aim. The jet lines up a second target. Parker closes the gap. Now 1,000 yards, then 600, then 300. The Mustang shakes violently. The P-51 isn't built for this speed and level pursuit. But Parker steadies his hand. Just a few more seconds. The jet hesitates. Just one beat too long. Parker squeezes the trigger. 650 caliber Browning machine guns hammer forward. The tracers arc perfectly. A beautiful, deadly stream. 2 rounds punch through the Me-262's tail. Another shreds into the left engine housing. A black cloud erupts from the nacelle. The jet wobbles. It tries to climb, banking left. But it's too late. The lift dies. The aircraft tips sideways and vanishes behind a tree line, followed by a rising plume of fire. Parker pulls up. His chest feels like it might explode. Every muscle locked, every nerve numb. Silence on the radio. For a few long seconds, not a word. Then someone mutters, "Did the rookie just down a jet?" The answer is the crackle of static. But every pilot in the group knows what they saw. A fighter nobody wanted. A pilot nobody trusted. A kill nobody thought possible. When the Allies first encountered the Me-262 in the skies over Europe, it shattered everything they thought they knew about air combat. It didn't just fly faster. It redefined speed. Climbing at rates twice that of piston fighters, diving like a meteor, and vanishing into cloud cover before most radar operators could finish a sentence, the jet wasn't a fighter. It was a ghost. And the myth took hold quickly. They said no rookie could catch one. They said even aces had trouble. That the only reason enemy Tu-62s were ever shot down was luck or German pilot error, not tactics. Certainly not raw courage. You needed altitude, numbers, and a miracle just to line up a shot. And when kills did happen, they came from the most elite, Major Francis Gabreski, Captain Chuck Yeager. Legends. So when word spread that a greenhorn, 22-year-old John Parker, had bagged a jet on his first combat interception, most of the 8th Air Force didn't believe it. At Ramstein, ground crews were sure the kill claim was an error. He must have hit a Focke-Wulf that looked fast. Pilots muttered, "No way he pulled that shot at that speed." Some even suggested the jet crashed on its own, maybe low on fuel, maybe a flameout. After all, Parker wasn't just inexperienced. He was flying a bird past retirement age. His P-51 had been patched together from 3 wrecks. The fuselage bore different paint than the wings. Even the canopy had a crack sealed with wax and hope. Other pilots called it the Frankenstein. It shouldn't have been airborne, let alone hunting jets. And Parker? He didn't boast. He didn't swagger. When debriefed, he simply said, "I saw a jet killing bombers. I tried to stop it." But behind the disbelief was a deeper fear, that everything they'd been told about jets being unstoppable wasn't quite true. That maybe, just maybe, under the right conditions, with the right pilot, even a prop plane could do the impossible. It wasn't supposed to work. The Mustang wasn't built for intercepting jets. Its laminar flow wing was efficient but not optimized for high-speed dives. Its armament was potent. But the Me-262's engines could outrun bullets if they saw them coming. The P-51 had a shot only during the jet's vulnerable moments, landing, takeoff, or when slowing to aim. But Parker didn't wait for those. He forced a mistake, baited a shot, closed the angle, and fired within a window barely wider than a heartbeat. He ignored the manual. He broke the odds. And in doing so, he cracked the myth. Not because he was the best pilot, but because he wasn't supposed to succeed. And that terrified people. Because if one rookie could drop a jet with a plane nobody wanted, what else had they been wrong about? The P-51 Mustang is remembered today as the crown jewel of American fighter engineering. Sleek, fast, and with the range to escort bombers deep into German territory, it was the hammer that helped crush the Luftwaffe. But that's not how the story began. In 1940, the Mustang wasn't even American. It was a desperate British order. The Royal Air Force, outgunned and stretched thin during the Battle of Britain, approached North American aviation for a new fighter. What they got was a prototype thrown together in 117 days. It had potential, sure, but early models were flawed, underpowered, short-legged. The P-51A's Allison engine choked at high altitude, right where German fighters operated. The USAAF barely noticed it. They had the P-40, the P-47, planes with proven records. The Mustang? It was a backup, a curiosity. At most, a low-altitude recon bird or a trainer. Pilots didn't fight over it, they avoided it. Everything changed when the British bolted a Rolls-Royce Merlin engine into the P-51's fuselage. Suddenly, the aircraft could breathe at 30,000 feet. It could outclimb, outrun, and outlast almost anything in the air. Range jumped to over 1,600 miles with drop tanks. Dogfighting became a ballet of energy and momentum. It was fast enough to chase the Focke-Wulf 190, agile enough to tangle with the Bf-109. And it could fly to Berlin and back without refueling. Still, in 1944, the Mustang wasn't universally trusted. It was too new, too British in its guts. Some pilots preferred the juggernaut P-47 Thunderbolt. Others stuck with the twin-engine P-38 Lightning. In squadrons full of veterans, the Mustang often ended up in the hands of rookies, like Parker. And Parker's plane? It was a Frankenstein. As the war dragged on, losses mounted. The 8th Air Force patched together whatever they had. Parker's Mustang came from 3 different wrecks. One shot up over Italy. One belly-landed in France. and one written off during training. The fuselage was riveted back together in a field hangar. The left flap still bore Italian dust. The right wing had mismatched ammo feeds. It wasn't just ugly. It was dangerous. But what Parker's crew chief understood, what most pilots missed, was that the Mustang had hidden talent. Its laminar flow wing gave it supreme efficiency in high-speed cruise. Its Merlin engine was smoother than anything the Americans had built. And if you treated it right, trimmed it carefully, flew the edge of its performance envelope, it could do things no one expected, including apparently running down a jet. The Me-262 had speed, but speed alone isn't strategy. The jet's engines took time to spool, so its acceleration wasn't instant. Its turns were lazy. If you could predict where it had to go, not where it was, you had a shot. And that's what Parker did. Not with superior tech, not with better guns or thrust or instruments, just with instinct, a broken plane, and timing. He didn't have the best Mustang. He had one nobody else wanted. But that day, in the chaos over Regensburg, it was the only one that mattered. Let's put the myth to the test, not with speculation, but with raw numbers. Because in war, belief breaks down, math doesn't. The Me-262 Schwalbe, Germany's first operational jet fighter, could reach a top speed of 540 mph in level flight. Its twin Junkers Jumo 04 turbojet engines provided roughly 1,980 pounds of thrust each. Compared to piston engine aircraft, it was from another planet. The Me-262 climbed at 4,900 feet per minute. It could engage, fire, and disengage before most Allied pilots even got visual confirmation. Now compare that to the P-51 Mustang. With the Packard-built Merlin V1657 engine, the Mustang topped out around 437 mph at 25,000 feet, over 100 mph slower than the Me-262. Its climb rate was approximately 3,200 feet per minute. Respectable, but again outclassed. The edge? Range. The P-51 could fly over 1,600 miles on internal and drop tanks. But in a head-on chase, it wasn't even close. Let's break down the engagement window. At closing speeds of 500–600 mph, a fighter pilot has roughly 2 to 3 seconds to identify, aim, and fire before separation. That assumes perfect alignment. Any offset, you lose time. Any shake in the airframe, you miss. Any error in prediction, the target is gone. That's why experts insisted you don't chase a jet, you intercept it during its most vulnerable phase, takeoff or landing. Parker's shot was none of that. It was during a live intercept, mid-air, both planes maneuvering, with the jet actively engaging a bomber formation. That's a nearly impossible shot by any standard. Yet Parker managed to close from 200 yards to 300 in under 7 seconds. That means his Mustang was diving at near-terminal velocity, converting altitude into speed. His engine risked overspeed, his guns risked jamming from vibration. But the key? The Me-262 had to slow to line up its own shot. That slowdown, likely down to 350–380 mph, gave Parker a shrinking window. Less than 4 seconds to acquire, aim, and fire. His 650 cal M2 Browning machine guns fired at 800 rounds per minute each. That's 4,800 rounds per minute total, 80 rounds per second. If Parker fired a 1-second burst, he unleashed about 80 bullets, 10 to 15 of which likely connected. 3 hit critical zones. That's the math of destruction. And then there's the odds. By early 1945, fewer than 40 Me-262s had been lost to P-51 Mustangs, out of hundreds fielded. The vast majority were hit on approach, landing, or while distracted by other aircraft. Only a handful, fewer than 5, were confirmed kills by solo P-51s in open-air combat. Parker's kill didn't just make him an outlier. It broke the model. One more number. The time from Parker's first sighting to kill confirmation? 12 seconds. That's how long it took to rewrite what pilots believed about jets. That's the margin between myth and math. The sky over Regensburg crackled with chaos. It was March 25th, 1945, less than 2 months before VE Day, and the 8th Air Force was deep into its strategic bombing campaign. Hundreds of B-17 flying fortresses crawled through thin cloud cover, engines groaning under the strain of full bomb loads. Behind them, P-51 Mustang escorts, scanning for trouble. John Parker's squadron had been airborne for nearly 3 hours. Fuel was low, tension was high. Radio chatter warned of jet activity near Nuremberg. That meant Me-262s, and it meant danger. Then it happened. Bandits, 9 o'clock high. Parker saw it first. A silver flash above the contrails, sleek, sharp, impossibly fast. It darted across the bomber stream, angled in, and dove. Enemy 262, and it wasn't running. It was hunting. The jet streaked past a B-17, its 4 Mk-108 30mm cannons lighting up like hellfire. The bomber shuddered. Flames, no parachutes. Parker's blood went cold. "Breaking formation," he barked into his mic, angling hard into a dive. No one followed. His CO's voice cracked. "Negative, Blue 3. Stay in pattern." But Parker was already committed. He dropped like a bullet, throttle wide open, oxygen mask biting into his cheeks. Altimeter spinning, engine redlining. The P-51 screamed past 460 palisades. The wings trembled. Parker trimmed slightly, just enough to stabilize, then scanned. The jet was pulling out of its own dive, banking left. Slower now, vulnerable. This was his moment. He cut across the jet's vector, aimed not where it was, but where it would be. He didn't have time to think, only act. 12 seconds from the first dive to the trigger pull. His 6 Brownings roared. The recoil jarred the stick. Sparks erupted from the Me-262's left nacelle. Then, smoke, flame. The jet's nose dipped. For a moment, time froze. Then the Me-262 exploded into the clouds below. Silence. Parker pulled up sharply, barely avoiding stall. His hands trembled. He didn't cheer, he didn't speak. He just circled once, confirmed no shoot, and climbed back toward the bomber stream. The radio was quiet. Then, "Blue 3, confirm kill." Parker's voice cracked. "Confirmed. Jet down. No survivors." He rejoined formation. No one said anything more. But in the debrief tent, hours later, the room was packed. Commanders, engineers, pilots who hadn't believed. They played back gun camera footage, frame by frame. The hit was clean. Center mass, critical systems. No one could deny it. 12 seconds, 1 dive, 1 shot. A rookie, flying a patched-up Mustang, had just downed a German jet in open combat. And every man in that tent knew the game had changed. 1 kill, 1 jet, 1 12-second engagement. On paper, it was a tactical blip. But in the fractured world of late-war Luftwaffe strategy, it was a ripple that became a rupture. Because Parker's kill didn't just dent a Me-262, it broke the illusion of its invincibility. Until that moment, the Luftwaffe's jet program held a psychological edge. American bomber crews feared it. Allied fighters avoided direct chases. Even ground crews whispered that you don't outrun a swallow. And on the German side, High Command poured dwindling resources into these sleek, temperamental machines, 70% of which never saw combat due to fuel shortages, sabotage, or mechanical failures. But after Regensburg, something shifted. The official report on Parker's kill went straight to the 8th Air Force's Tactical Research Group. Analysts reran the math, closing speeds, engagement angles, ammo spread. What they found stunned them. The P-51 in a dive could match or exceed the Me-262's effective speed over short bursts, not in level flight, not in sustained pursuit, but in a tightly timed intercept window, 6 to 10 seconds. It was enough. Commanders across the ETO revised their jet engagement protocols. Until now, pilots were trained to hit Me-262s only during takeoff or landing. Now, the new guidance spread like wildfire. Diving intercepts permitted. Engine limits may be exceeded. Engage at convergence vector, not chase. Suddenly, the Allies weren't afraid of the jets. They were hunting them. In the weeks after Parker's kill, confirmed Me-262 shootdowns rose 32%. Fighter groups began coordinating high-altitude patrols with dive vectors mapped specifically to jet flight paths. Mustang pilots, many of them rookies like Parker, were briefed on how to trim their elevators during steep dives to delay compressibility stall, a technique borrowed from test pilots. And the Luftwaffe? They noticed. Me-262 squadrons became paranoid. Some refused to engage unless the odds were overwhelming. Others altered flight profiles, flying erratically at medium altitude to avoid dive intercepts. The net result? Fewer attacks, shorter sorties, and more aborted missions. Even Göring's inner circle started doubting the jet's edge. In one intercepted radio transmission, a Me-262 pilot cursed the Mustang ghosts now appearing out of nowhere during patrol runs. It wasn't just one kill, it was the collapse of confidence, and for a weapon system like the Me-262, underfunded, poorly maintained, and rushed into combat, morale was the last thing keeping it aloft. Parker didn't know any of this at the time. He returned to his bunk, cleaned his boots, wrote a quiet letter home. But while he slept, staff officers rewrote manuals. Mechanics inspected turbos for emergency dive resilience. And a myth, the myth of the invincible jet, began to burn. All because one rookie pulled the trigger. And the war blinked. April 3rd, 1945. Just 9 days after Parker's kill, the 357th Fighter Group launched an escort mission out of Leiston, England. Destination: the Leuna synthetic oil plants near Merseburg, a prime Luftwaffe target. Intelligence suggested heavy Me-262 activity. But this time, the briefing was different. Instead of avoiding jets, pilots were instructed to engage on dive vectors. Parker's kill had changed everything. Now the P-51s were bait, and bait with teeth. Captain Ernie Harris led Blue Flight that day. A seasoned pilot with 11 kills, he'd always respected the 262s. But he'd also studied the new intercept math. His crew chief had trimmed his Mustang's elevators slightly forward, a risky tweak that made the stick heavier, but gave more stability in high-speed dives. "We're not here to run," Harris told his squad midair. "We're here to kill." They reached the rendezvous point above the bomber stream at 24,000 feet. The sky was eerily clear. Then, just past Leipzig, the shadows arrived. 4 Me-262s screamed in from the sun. Vapor trails etched zigzags across the stratosphere. Harris's headset lit up with chatter. "Bandits, 10 o'clock, closing fast." But instead of breaking away, Harris shouted one word: "Dive." Blue Flight nosed over as one, dropping into the lower layers at near Mach-Tuck territory. Their Packard Merlin engines howled in protest. Airspeed indicators spiked past redline. Every instinct screamed to pull up, but the pilots held steady. Below, the Me-262s lined up on a cluster of B-17s, thinking they had a clean shot. Then, from above, the Mustangs pounced. Harris's first burst caught a 262 just aft of the cockpit. The jet spiraled, trailing smoke. His wingman flared wide, then stitched another along the fuselage. Both exploded within seconds. The other two jets broke formation in panic, diving for cloud cover. But by then, the P-51s had gained momentum, and the advantage. One 262 tried to outclimb, banking hard and spooling up. But Harris had altitude and angle. He closed the gap in seconds, firing a 5-round burst that snapped the enemy wing like a twig. 3 jets down in under 20 seconds. When Harris landed, the ground crew thought the gun camera film had jammed. The kills happened too fast. Debrief officers stared at the footage, stunned. The conclusion? Dive velocity was now a viable countermeasure against jets. If the pilot had the nerves, the machine had the guts, and the moment was seized. And Harris wasn't alone. Dozens of similar ambush kills followed in the final weeks of the war. Parker's miracle had become a doctrine. What was once a death sentence, diving after a jet, was now the opening move. And the sky? It no longer belonged to speed alone. It belonged to whoever struck first and hardest. By mid-April 1945, Berlin was smoldering under near-daily raids. The Allies were closing in on every front, and the Luftwaffe was down to scraps. But scraps don't mean harmless, especially not when those scraps include jets. The 339th Fighter Group, stationed in Foulmere, had been tasked with an aggressive new directive: lure and kill. Jet sightings near the capital were increasing. Intercepts were now prioritized over bombing coverage. Their new unofficial motto? Leave the bombs to the heavies. We're hunting ghosts. On April 16th, the skies above Berlin filled with B-24s bound for rail yards. Riding shotgun were 36 Mustangs, 12 of them from Lieutenant Chris "Skid" Donahue's squadron. Fresh out of advanced flight school, Skid was only 21. He'd read about Parker. He'd seen Harris's gun cam footage. Now he wanted in. Their plan was textbook: fly high above the bombers, force the jets to make a run, then drop fast and hit them in their window of vulnerability, the slow banking climb before they reset for another pass. They called it the hinge. At 26,000 feet, Skid spotted it. A Me-262, darting like a silver stiletto through puffs of flak, weaving through the bombers with surgical precision. The jet's pilot pulled tight turns, firing short bursts, trying to score a hit without overcommitting. Skid radioed, "Visual, 1 o'clock low, intercept vector locked." Then came the second, then the third. The Luftwaffe was sending a wing, 4 jets now, maybe more, slicing through the formation. Skid's lead barked, "Now!" The Mustangs dove. Instantly, airspeed screamed past safe limits. The P-51s were no longer planes. They were arrows falling from the sky. Skid's canopy blurred. The ground rolled. But he kept the target in view. A 262 pulling up to reset after a pass. At 500 mph, Skid's Mustang bucked like a wild horse. He held trim with both hands, fired in 3 short bursts. Nothing. Overshoot. Then the 262's wingman banked into his path. Skid rolled, aligned, squeezed. Hits. The Me-262 flared up like magnesium. The jet spiraled into a forest east of Potsdam. No shoot. Another Mustang pilot, Red Rawlins, splashed a second jet seconds later using nearly the same maneuver. 2 jets down. The rest broke formation and fled north. The entire fight lasted under 40 seconds. Back at Foulmere, Skid was silent. He wasn't smiling. The jet kill didn't feel like a victory. It felt like a warning. Because now he knew speed wasn't enough. Neither was surprise. It was timing, perfect timing. That made the difference. And that's what the rookie had learned. A trick, a dive, a trap. Set by men flying machines the experts said were obsolete. But the jet pilots didn't laugh anymore. It was never supposed to happen. The Me-262, with its swept wings and turbojets, was designed to dominate. It climbed faster, flew higher, and hit harder than anything in the Allied arsenal. Every inch of it screamed future. It was sleek, modern, and terrifying, until a clunky, oil-streaked mid-war relic started ripping them out of the sky. The P-51 Mustang wasn't built to beat jets, but the men who flew it, and the mechanics who pushed it past spec, didn't care what it was built for. They found cracks in the jet's acceleration curve, in its turning radius, in its landing vulnerability, and most fatally, in its pilot's assumptions. Before Parker's kill, Jet pilots were cocky. They operated under the illusion of immunity. But after Harris's dive intercepts, Donohue's Skyfall kills, and dozens of others who followed the same math of chaos, the Me-262s lost that edge. They started flying higher, attacking less. Their sorties became shorter. Their firepower was feared, but their tempo dropped. And in war, time is death. Historians love to cite technology as the pivot point of WWII, the tank, the nuke, the radar, the jet. But the real pivot wasn't the hardware. It was how fast someone figured out how to break it. The Mustang didn't outfly the 262. It outsmarted it. It didn't rely on raw speed. It used gravity. It didn't chase. It anticipated. And it didn't fear the myth of German engineering. It exploited its blind spots. The rookie kill that changed the war? It wasn't just a miracle. It was a message that no weapon is untouchable, that no machine is invincible, that even in the age of jets, one pilot, one hack, and 1 second of courage can redraw the sky. And that's how the P-51, underdog, overused, underestimated, became the last thing a jet pilot saw before everything went black. The P-51 didn't win by design, it won by defiance. And the rookie? He just pulled the trigger. You've just seen how one rookie, flying a so-called outdated fighter, rewrote the rules of jet warfare. No magic tech, no elite squadron, no experimental prototype, just one man, one dive, and one moment of impossible nerve. Now imagine this. A pilot presses a red button under his seat, one labeled emergency boost, installed without authorization, using salvaged parts and barely tested wiring. It shouldn't have done anything. But the moment he flipped it, the plane leapt forward like a missile, burst through a jet formation, and rocketed straight into the sky. That's not a myth. That's what happened over the Alps, when a mechanic's forbidden engine mod gave a dying plane one last shot and changed the course of a dogfight no one should have survived. Because in this war, sometimes the deadliest weapon